In the busy streets of Lagos, there was a small restaurant called Golden Palm Kitchen. It wasn't the biggest restaurant in the city. It didn't have fancy decorations or expensive advertisements. But somehow, it was always full. People came from all over the city just to eat there. The food was cheap. The service was fast. And the man everyone trusted the most was the quiet waiter named Samuel. Samuel had worked at Golden Palm Kitchen for almost 3 years. He was polite, calm, always smiling. Customers loved him. If someone needed water, Samuel brought it. If someone dropped their fork, Samuel replaced it. If someone didn't know what to order, Samuel always had the perfect recommendation. "Try the special stew tonight," he would say softly. And strangely, most people always ordered whatever Samuel recommended. But there was something strange about Samuel. He never ate the food himself. Not even once. Other waiters would sit in the back during breaks and eat leftovers. But Samuel always refused. "I'm not hungry," he would say quietly. At first, no one thought much about it. Until one night, a regular customer named Daniel came to eat dinner. Daniel had been visiting Golden Palm Kitchen for years. He trusted the place. But that night, something strange happened. Samuel walked to his table and smiled. "Good evening, sir. Would you like to try tonight's special?" Daniel nodded. "Sure. Bring it." Samuel disappeared into the kitchen. When he returned, he placed the plate gently on the table. A thick bowl of stew with fresh meat. The smell was incredible. Daniel picked up his spoon. But before he took the first bite, he noticed something. Samuel was still standing there, watching him. Not smiling. Just watching. Daniel laughed nervously. "Something wrong?" Samuel shook his head. "No, sir." Daniel shrugged and began eating. Across the room, Samuel slowly turned away and walked back toward the kitchen, his face suddenly becoming cold. Because Samuel knew something Daniel didn't. Tonight's meal would be his last. The restaurant was packed that night. People laughed. Plates clattered. Music played softly from the radio near the counter. No one noticed Daniel slowly starting to sweat. At first, he thought it was just the spice. Golden Palm Kitchen was famous for its spicy stew. But something felt wrong. His stomach twisted. A sharp pain spread through his chest. Daniel dropped his spoon. "Water," he whispered. But the pain grew worse. His vision blurred. People at nearby tables turned as his chair suddenly fell backwards. "Hey! Someone help him!" The restaurant exploded into panic. Customers rushed away from the table. The manager ran over. "Call an ambulance." Daniel lay on the floor, shaking violently. Within minutes, the ambulance arrived. Paramedics rushed him out of the restaurant. And the restaurant slowly returned to normal. The manager apologized to the customers. Food poisoning, probably. But in the corner of the room, Samuel stood silently, watching. Not worried. Not surprised. Because he already knew what would happen. The next morning, news spread across Lagos. Daniel had died in the hospital. Cause of death: unknown poisoning. The restaurant owner was furious. Health inspectors arrived immediately. They tested the food, the kitchen, the water, everything. But the results shocked everyone. Nothing was contaminated. The restaurant was declared safe. And within a few days, Golden Palm Kitchen reopened. Customers returned. Life went back to normal. But something else happened. Another customer died. Then another. 3 people. All regular customers. All had eaten at Golden Palm Kitchen. And every single one had been served by the same waiter, Samuel. But no one noticed the pattern. No one. Except one person. A young journalist named Aisha. And she was about to uncover something far darker than anyone imagined. Aisha Bello had spent the last 2 years working as a junior reporter for a small Lagos news outlet called City Post. Most days, her job was boring. Writing about traffic accidents, street robberies, local business openings. Nothing big. Nothing important. But when the third mysterious death connected to Golden Palm Kitchen appeared in the news, something in Aisha's mind refused to ignore it. 3 customers. 3 deaths. All within 2 weeks. All listed as sudden poisoning. And all of them had eaten dinner at the same restaurant. The police had already dismissed the connection. The restaurant passed every health inspection, one officer said during a press interview. No evidence of contamination. Case closed. But Aisha wasn't convinced. Something about the story felt wrong. Late that night, she sat at her desk staring at the files. The first victim, Daniel Okafor. The second victim, Mrs. Grace Adeniyi. The third victim, Tan Bakir. 3 different people. 3 different ages. 3 completely different lives. But they all had one thing in common. Golden Palm Kitchen. Aisha leaned back in her chair and sighed. There has to be something connecting them, she muttered. She opened the medical report of the first victim. The doctors had found a rare toxin in his bloodstream. Not food poisoning. Not bacteria. Poison. But the strange part. The poison was almost impossible to detect unless someone specifically looked for it. The same toxin appeared in the second victim. And the third. Aisha's heart began beating faster. This wasn't an accident. Someone had poisoned them. But how? She grabbed her notebook and began comparing the restaurant receipts from the victims' bank statements. One by one. Line by line. Order by order. Most of the meals were different. Different dishes. Different drinks. Different tables. But then, she noticed something strange. Every receipt had one name printed at the bottom. The waiter who served the table. Her pen froze. All 3 receipts had the same name. Samuel. Aisha stared at the paper. Coincidence, she whispered. Maybe. Maybe not. The next morning, Aisha decided to visit Golden Palm Kitchen herself. The restaurant looked normal. Customers laughing. Plates clattering. The smell of stew filling the air. Nothing suspicious. Nothing dangerous. Then she saw him. Samuel. Moving quietly between tables. Carrying plates. Smiling politely. He looked like the most harmless person in the world. But something about his eyes made Aisha uncomfortable. Cold. Empty. Like he was always watching. Samuel suddenly turned toward her table. Their eyes met for a moment. Then he walked over with a polite smile. Good afternoon, he said calmly. Welcome to Golden Palm Kitchen. Aisha forced a smile. Yes, thank you. Samuel placed a menu in front of her. Would you like to try today's special? Aisha's heart skipped a beat. She remembered something from the reports. All three victims had ordered the special dish on the night they died. Samuel leaned slightly closer. His voice softer now. It's our most popular meal. Aisha slowly looked up at him. And for the first time, she realized something terrifying. Samuel wasn't just offering food. He was watching her carefully. Almost like he was deciding something. Then he smiled again. And said quietly, "You should try it." Aisha stared at Samuel for a moment after he suggested the special dish. "You should try it." His voice was calm. Too calm. Something about the way he said it made the back of Aisha's neck feel cold. She forced a small smile and closed the menu slowly. "I think I'll just have rice and grilled chicken," she replied. For the first time, Samuel's expression changed. Just slightly. The polite smile faded for a fraction of a second. Almost like disappointment. But then it returned. "Of course," he said softly. "Your order will be ready soon." He turned and walked toward the kitchen. Aisha watched him carefully. Her instincts told her something important had just happened. Samuel clearly wanted her to order the special meal. Why? She pulled out her notebook under the table and quickly wrote. Samuel pushes customers to order the special. Around her, the restaurant buzzed with normal life. Families talking. Waiters rushing between tables. Nothing looked suspicious. Yet 3 people had died after eating here. Aisha scanned the room. Then she saw something strange. At the far corner table, an older man sat alone. Samuel approached him with the same polite smile. Aisha leaned slightly forward, pretending to drink water while she listened. "Good afternoon, sir," Samuel said. "Would you like to try our special stew tonight?" The man laughed. "Is it really that good?" Samuel nodded slowly. "It's our most recommended dish." The man smiled. "All right then. I'll try it." Samuel wrote the order and walked back toward the kitchen. Aisha's stomach tightened. This was exactly what had happened with the previous victims. She opened her phone and quietly started recording video. 10 minutes later, Samuel returned carrying the man's meal. A large bowl of stew. Thick sauce. Pieces of meat floating inside. The smell filled the air. Samuel placed the bowl gently on the table. "Enjoy your meal." Then he stepped back. But he didn't leave. He just stood there for a moment. Watching. The man picked up his spoon. Took the first bite. Aisha's heart pounded. Nothing happened. The man kept eating normally. Laughing to himself while reading something on his phone. After a minute, Samuel finally walked away. Aisha exhaled slowly. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe she was being paranoid. Her own food arrived soon after. Rice and grilled chicken. She ate slowly while continuing to watch Samuel move between tables. Everything looked normal. Too normal. But just as she finished her meal, something sudden happened. The older man who had ordered the special suddenly dropped his spoon. His hands began shaking. He grabbed his chest. Aisha's chair scraped loudly against the floor as she stood up. The man gasped for air. People around him started shouting. "Someone call an ambulance. Help him." Chaos filled the restaurant. Customers jumped up from their seats. The man collapsed onto the floor. Aisha turned quickly toward Samuel. The waiter stood near the kitchen door, watching the scene quietly. Not shocked. Not scared. Just watching. Their eyes met across the room. And in that moment, Aisha knew something terrifying. Samuel knew exactly what was happening. because he had just served it. And this time, Aisha had proof. The restaurant was in chaos. Customers stood up from their tables. Chairs scraped loudly across the floor. Some people rushed toward the collapsed man while others quickly moved away, fear spreading through the room like fire. Aisha grabbed her phone and continued recording. The older man on the floor struggled to breathe. His body trembled violently. "Call the ambulance," someone shouted again. The restaurant manager ran over, panic all over his face. What happened? No one knew. Except one person. Across the room, near the kitchen door, Samuel stood silently. Watching. His face showed no fear. No confusion. Just a quiet, emotionless stare. Aisha focused her phone camera on him. Something about the way he looked at the dying man made her blood run cold. It wasn't the reaction of someone witnessing a tragedy. It looked more like someone watching a plan unfold perfectly. Within minutes, the ambulance arrived again. Paramedics rushed inside and lifted the man onto a stretcher. Customers whispered nervously as the ambulance door slammed shut and drove away. The restaurant fell into an uneasy silence. The manager apologized repeatedly to everyone. "Please don't panic. It must be a medical emergency," he insisted. But people were already leaving. Fear had spread too quickly. Aisha slowly walked toward the counter. Samuel was wiping a table calmly, as if nothing had happened. She stopped in front of him. "Rough night," she said carefully. Samuel looked up. For a moment, his dark eyes studied her face. Then he gave the same polite smile he gave every customer. "Yes," he said quietly. "Very unfortunate." Aisha leaned slightly closer. "I noticed something strange," she said. Samuel raised an eyebrow. "Oh." "The man who collapsed," Aisha continued. "He ordered the special." Samuel nodded slowly. "Yes. Many customers do." Aisha held his gaze. "So did the other people who died here recently." For a brief second, the smile disappeared from Samuel's face. But it returned almost immediately. "That is only coincidence," he replied calmly. Aisha didn't answer. Instead, she glanced toward the kitchen. "Mind if I see where the food is prepared?" she asked casually. Samuel's expression froze. "Customers are not allowed in the kitchen," he said firmly. Aisha smiled. Of course. But something in Samuel's eyes had changed. The friendly waiter was gone. Now there was something colder behind his stare. Something calculating. Aisha knew she couldn't push further tonight. Not without proof. She paid for her meal and walked slowly toward the exit. But before leaving, she turned once more. Samuel was watching her again. Standing perfectly still. Their eyes met. And for the first time, Aisha saw something terrifying inside his expression. Recognition. Samuel now knew exactly who she was. Not just a customer. Not just a curious visitor. But someone who was getting dangerously close to the truth. And that meant one thing. Aisha had just become his next problem. And Samuel had already proven one thing very clearly. Anyone who became a problem for him didn't stay alive for long. Aisha couldn't stop thinking about Samuel. Even after leaving the restaurant, his cold stare kept replaying in her mind. Something about that man was deeply wrong. 3 people had died. And now a 4th man had collapsed after eating the same special dish. This wasn't coincidence. This was murder. By the time Aisha reached her apartment, it was almost midnight. But instead of resting, she opened her laptop and began digging deeper. She searched through police reports, medical records, restaurant licenses, employee histories, anything connected to Golden Palm Kitchen. Most of the information looked normal. The restaurant had passed inspections for years. The owner, Mr. Okeke, had no criminal history. But when Aisha searched the staff records, she found something strange. Samuel's employment file was almost empty. No previous workplace. No detailed background. Just a name. Samuel Adeyemi. Hired 3 years ago. No references. No permanent address listed. Aisha frowned. That's impossible, she whispered. Most restaurants require full background information. Yet Samuel's file looked like someone had barely checked anything. Almost like he had simply appeared out of nowhere. Then she checked something else. The death reports again. This time, she looked closely at the victims themselves. Danya Okafor, Grace Adeniyi, Ton Bakir, and now the newest victim at the hospital. At first glance, they had nothing in common. Different jobs, different neighborhoods, different lives. But as Aisha kept searching, a strange connection appeared. Her heart began beating faster. 3 years ago, all 4 victims had been involved in the same court case. A hit-and-run accident. A young delivery driver had died after being struck by a speeding car. The case had gone to court. But the driver responsible had never been convicted. The witnesses had given weak statements. Evidence had disappeared. The suspect had walked free. Aisha leaned closer to the screen. The witnesses in that case were the same people who were now dying. Her stomach twisted. Wait, what? She opened the final document in the file. The victim's name. The delivery driver who died in the accident. Her eyes widened as she read it. Michael Adeyemi. The same last name as Samuel. Aisha slowly leaned back in her chair. Everything suddenly made sense. Samuel wasn't randomly poisoning customers. He was choosing specific people. People connected to his brother's death. This wasn't food poisoning. This was revenge. Carefully planned revenge. Aisha grabbed her jacket immediately. If she was right, Samuel wasn't finished yet. There had been 5 witnesses in that court case. 4 of them were now dead or dying. Which meant one thing. One witness was still alive. And if Samuel was following his plan, that person would be next. Aisha rushed out the door. Because somewhere in Lagos, another innocent meal was about to become a death sentence. And Samuel was already preparing the next plate. Aisha drove through the quiet streets of Lagos as fast as she could. Her mind raced with the discovery she had just made. 4 witnesses from the old court case were already dead or dying. Which meant there was only 1 witness left. If Samuel was taking revenge on everyone involved in his brother's death, then that last person was in serious danger. Aisha checked the court records again while waiting at a red light. The final witness's name appeared clearly on the screen. Dr. Victor Balogun. A respected doctor who worked at a private hospital in Lagos. 3 years ago, he had testified in the hit-and-run case. His statement had been simple. He claimed he couldn't clearly identify the driver that night. Because of that weak testimony, the suspect had walked free. Now Aisha understood. Samuel believed those witnesses had allowed his brother's killer to escape justice. So he had decided to deliver his own. One by one. Through food. Through poison. Through the place no one would ever suspect. A restaurant. Aisha quickly searched for Dr. Baligan's location. Her stomach tightened when she saw the result. The doctor had posted something on social media only an hour ago. A photo. Dinner at Golden Palm Kitchen. Aisha slammed her hand against the steering wheel. No. She pressed the gas pedal harder. By the time she reached the restaurant, the parking lot was still full. Lights glowed warmly through the windows. Everything looked peaceful. Normal. But Aisha knew the truth now. Inside that building, a killer was serving his final dish. She rushed through the restaurant door. Customers looked up in surprise. The same smells of stew and spices filled the air. Aisha scanned the room desperately. Then she saw him. Dr. Baligan sat at a table near the window. And standing beside him was Samuel, holding a tray. On the tray sat a bowl of the restaurant's famous special stew. Samuel gently placed the bowl in front of the doctor. "Enjoy your meal," he said calmly. Dr. Baligan smiled and picked up his spoon. Aisha's heart nearly stopped. "Wait," she shouted. Every head in the restaurant turned toward her. Samuel froze. Dr. Baligan paused with the spoon halfway to his mouth. Aisha rushed across the room. "Don't eat that," she said breathlessly. The doctor frowned in confusion. "What are you talking about?" Aisha pointed directly at Samuel. "He's poisoning the food." The restaurant erupted in shocked whispers. The manager ran forward angrily. "Miss, what are you saying?" But Aisha pulled out her phone and showed the recordings. The collapsed customers. The pattern of deaths. The court case. Everything. Dr. Baligan slowly lowered his spoon. His face turned pale as he looked at Samuel. For the first time, Samuel's calm expression disappeared completely. The room fell silent. And Samuel quietly said something that sent chills through everyone listening. "You shouldn't have stopped him." Then he slowly reached into his apron pocket and pulled out a small glass vial filled with a dark liquid. Because Samuel had always planned for one final meal. And if he couldn't serve it, he was ready to deliver it himself. The restaurant fell completely silent. Everyone stared at Samuel as he held the small glass vial in his hand. The dark liquid inside moved slowly as he lifted it slightly. Dr. Baligan pushed his chair back, his face pale with fear. "You're insane," the doctor whispered. Samuel's eyes were calm. "Too calm." "No," he replied quietly. "I'm just finishing what should have been done 3 years ago." Aisha stepped forward carefully. "Your brother's death was a tragedy," she said. "But killing innocent people won't fix it." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Innocent," he repeated softly. He pointed directly at Dr. Baligan. "That man lied in court." His voice slowly grew colder. "They all did." Memories burned in his mind. The night his younger brother, Michael, had been killed on the road. The driver responsible had money and power. And the witnesses? They stayed silent. They claimed they couldn't see. They claimed they couldn't remember. Because of them, the killer walked free. Samuel looked around the restaurant one last time. "One by one," he said quietly, "I gave them the same thing they gave my brother." "What?" Aisha asked carefully. Samuel looked at the vial. "Justice." Before anyone could move, he quickly opened the vial and drank the poison himself. Gasps filled the room. "No!" Aisha shouted. Samuel dropped the empty vial as his body began to shake. Within seconds, he collapsed onto the restaurant floor. The same poison. The same slow death he had served to others. Paramedics arrived minutes later. But it was already too late. Samuel Adeyemi died that night in the same restaurant where he had taken so many lives. And even though the murders were solved, one terrifying truth remained. Every victim Samuel had chosen had truly been connected to his brother's case. Which meant something even darker. The real killer who hit Michael with that car was still out there. Free. And somewhere in Lagos. Another story of revenge was just beginning. But weeks later, Aisha received a strange anonymous message on her phone. It contained only 6 words. The wrong people paid for it.